Who needs a low-noise floor these days anyway? It is so overrated. Welcome to QRM.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to QRM Episode 3, all about POTA. So I'm here, I'm Andy in 0APX, Product Manager for World Radio League, and my co-host is Professor Jim.
That's me, and for BFR, I am the lead instructor for Ham Radio Prep.
That's right. And with us tonight, we have our special guest, Claude AC4SH. Say hi, Claude.
Hey, good afternoon.
Good to have you on here.
For those who don't know, Claude is, and Claude, help me make sure I get this right, the Georgia State Representative for Park Up.
Yes, all volunteer, but I do that, and I enjoy it.
Awesome. We're going to talk a lot about.
It's good to have you on here, Claude. Absolutely. Tonight's POTA night, all about POTA. So yeah, real quick, Claude, you've been a ham for how long?
Well, since '92.
92. All right.
33 years.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. And how long have you been with Parks on the Air?
I didn't find out about Parks on the Air till 5 years ago, and I volunteered later in the year I started, and so I've done a lot with it since then.
All right. 2016 was National Parks on the Air, and then it started growing after that. So
Right.
I'd still call you an early bird, Claude.
All right. Yeah, we might get into a little bit of the Parks on the Air history later, kind of cover a little bit of that. But, yeah, we're going to cover some of that. We're going to cover kind of what you do, Claude, in your role a little bit later, and maybe go over some tips for hunters, activators, and sounds like you guys have a Georgia POTA event coming up. We'll get into that as well. First of all, I've got some updates for you from World Radio League. We've just released the single activity view, so you can pull up a POTA site, a SOTA site, WWFF site, look at the World Radio League specific stats. Some of those organizations don't allow us necessarily to pull their stats directly into our system, so you won't be able to see all the stats, but you can see the World Radio League stats, who's activated it, when it's been activated, how many activations, and so on. We just added QRZ call sign lookup integration. A lot of people have been asking for that. That's a super exciting addition. Really glad we were able to get that in there. So now you can just go into your integrations page, sign in with your credentials there, and start pulling call sign lookups through QRZ. We're in the process of enhancing our band conditions widget. So right now, if you've got it on your mobile app, you can tap that widget to refresh it, and that will bring up the most up-to-date information if you don't want to wait for it to update automatically. Logbook statistics is another one. So now you've got just a really quick shareable view that shows your statistics, how many QSOs you've logged over how long a time, what your QSO rate was, what bands, modes, that type of thing. So really, really neat view there. You can look at that. It's right next to your map view, and the map view, the spotting tab, all that. It's just another tab in that window. And then we've added the ability to log it's summit to summit, WWFF to WFF. Any of those types, even if that activity is not the primary activity in your activation logbook. Originally, we only allowed the primary activity to have a park-to-park style contact, but now you can, if whatever activity you have added, you can log any of those as long as you've got that activity added. It doesn't have to be the primary activity anymore. The last 2.5 weeks have been really crazy. We've been going through, we've been going back and forth with a bunch of our customers, getting feedback from them, cleaning up some things that they found for us. So that's why you haven't seen a whole ton of major new things from us. We've been just collecting customer feedback, doing a lot of just stability improvements, that type of thing. And we have made a lot of progress, and we are now to the point where we're going to be kicking off some great new projects. So that's mainly what's going on from the World Radio League side. Jim, what's new in Ham Radio Prep World?
All right. Well, first thing I'm going to talk about is we've gotten a lot of questions about what the heck is the FCC doing. So, about 10 days ago, as we're recording this, they said, hey, we're going to open up the discussion for any propose changes to the regulations. So, since FCC regulates amateur radio, that could include amateur radio changes. So, we produced a video called Delete, Delete, Delete. That is the name of the FCC proceeding that just goes through a little bit of what's going to happen potentially. So, the important thing to remember here is that nothing happens right now. This is just call for concepts. So it'll be a while before anything happens to ham radio, and there will be time for amateurs to give feedback on any proposed changes that do happen. Right now, it's just the FCC saying, hey, what kind of things could we possibly change? So we've got a video on that. It's on YouTube if folks are looking for that. I personally am working behind the scenes on a new course. So we are putting together a course related to satellite and space operations. So it goes along really well with our HF Masterclass and our class on emergency communications. People want to know how can I do this, and so we're going to give folks a deeper dive. And if they want to work a satellite, work through the ISS, those kind of things, bounce signals off the moon, this will be the course to help them learn more how to do that. And then the other thing we're doing, Andy, you mentioned bugs on the World Radio League side. Sometimes we get customer feedback that says, is this question really worded the way you want it to, or I have a concern about this answer. So we call those course issues, and we've been going through and cleaning up some course issues as well. Sometimes they are based on feedback from like I said, our students. Sometimes the VEC says, hey, you know what, we're going to change this word in a question, and so we've got to go in and do those things. So we've been working a little bit on course issues as well behind the scenes, because we always want to keep these courses up to date and make sure they're as solid as they can. So we're excited about that, and that's what's going on the ham radio prep side.
Fantastic, fantastic. Yeah, and you guys are doing a great job over there, and yeah, I'm seeing some exciting things happening over there, and can't wait for some of the stuff that's going to be happening soon. Yeah, so one more thing on the World Radio League side, we've got the CQ Worldwide WPX single sideband contest this weekend. I think it actually just started right before we started recording this podcast episode. We hammered down hard once we got past some of those issues I was referencing earlier, and we tore into getting our contesting system ready for CQ Worldwide WPX SSB. We now have the incrementing serial number field fully functioning, and we have Cabrillo export fully functioning. So those are two really big ones that we had to get out the door. We've got those out the door for this specific contest, and then we will be adding that to future contests as well. So super excited to see that go out the door. So all right here we're going to take a quick break, and we will be back right after this with Claude and all about POTA. So stay tuned. This episode of the QRM podcast is brought to you by Ham Radio Prep. With extensive video and text courses for all U.S. amateur license levels, Ham Radio Prep is the best way to study for your license. Their unique bite-sized approach makes lesson retention faster and easier than ever. Sign up today at hamradioprep.com. This episode is also brought to you by World Radio League. Whether you're a brand new ham or a seasoned operator, World Radio League is the right logbook for you. Striking the balance between functionality and ease of use, World Radio League is the modern logbook for all hams. Sign up for free today at worldradioleague.com. All right, we're back, and we're going to just jump straight into the main topic here. Jim, Claude is your POTA representative. You're the mapping expert for your state, correct?
He is. I am in the state of Georgia, and Claude is the guy who handles the POTA maps for the state of Georgia. So, Claude, before we explain that, let's really go into the basics. And what is POTA? And POTA is Parks on the Air, right?
That is correct. And, activators, people go out to the park, set up a station, and they call them hunters, the people that chase them or look them up and try to make the contact with them.
So you can be an activator and go out in a park and set up an antenna and play radio, or you can be a hunter, which just means you sit in your shack and you find people who are in parks and you make contacts with them.
Oh, absolutely, that's right. And
Yep.
in there a little bit of both, yeah.
Yeah. And what I like about the hunting side is it's easy because you don't even have to log, because it's the hunter log that gets submitted that makes it that is the official record of the contact as far as Parks on the Air goes.
It is really easy for the hunters if they don't want to log. Some of the guys really try to keep track of the contacts or the people they've talked to or the parks, but that's okay. It's not the onus is on the activator to get everything down and get it submitted so we all get credit.
So, Claude, you are the state POTA representative. What does that mean? What does that entail for Georgia?
Well, it's really the mapping representative. Once I got started with Parks on the Air, they sent out a note. These are volunteers. You see anything you want to do, let us know. So I got in touch with the mapping rep, and he said, I'm ready to quit doing this. I was just going to help him. But he said, yeah, you can have it. So I should have known. I was in the military. You don't volunteer, but I did. So that's the way it started. But I do try to find parks that meet the POTA guidelines. It's got to be federal or state owned and operated, and public access. And I've gone through a lot of iterations of trying to find it. We did get held back. POTA said, let's get them all caught up because some states were a little further along than others. So we got put on hold after Georgia got to 205 parks. And I kept a log for 2 years until the end of 22. It was October 2022, and dumped another 21 or 2 into Georgia then. So, but between the times, I get recommendations from some POTA interested people. Some were activators, some weren't. Sometimes they'd ask the questions that really made me feel like they didn't understand what they needed. And of course, I was the same way starting out. I wanted my local park, the one down the street, to be a POTA entity, but it didn't fit. And so I try to coach them and try to be accommodating, encouraging, and I've had some pretty good fun. I've met a lot of people doing it too.
Sure.
So you mentioned
sorry, Andy. So as big as a city park might be, like there's a big 15-acre park just up the street from me here, and it's nice, and I know ham clubs go up there, but because it's a city park, it's not a state or federal, it does not qualify to be a POTA park, right?
That is correct, sort of, Jim, but I got an interesting example. I had a group from Rome, Georgia. They had a pretty city park like you described, right on the side of the river downtown. They'd like to meet once a week there and do ham radio stuff. And they said, can't we make it a park? Initially I want to say no, but I thought about that river is on the Trail of Tears. And I said, why not? You got to look around a little bit. It's not just the yellow dots you see on the map. So it turns out, it's got to be owned by state or federal. It's got to be operated by them. But there's a lot of overlap that you can read in there too.
So you're saying those trails, wherever you are on that trail, even if you're not near the yellow dot, even if the yellow dot's in another state, if you're on that trail, you can use that park.
That is correct. Trails, streams. There are a lot of trails. That's how DC gets bifers, because there's a lot of crossing trails up there too.
So I know Appalachian Trail starts in Georgia.
Yep.
How close? I don't want to set up in the middle of the trail and block hikers. How close can I be and still count as an activation for a trail?
On trails, it's 100 feet from the boundaries. So you can, and you're right, Jim. You don't want to be in the way of the hikers. You would give us a bad name. But also, Appalachian Trail or any trail system that's a recognized system, the ones that are maintained, like Appalachian Trail Conference maintains the trail, but they also maintain the Blue Blazes, and so those count as well.
Okay, and when you say Blue Blazes, those are the lead-in trails, those kind of things. Like in Georgia, that's the Benton McKay Trail might be one of those.
Part of it is, and yeah, and the access trail from the terminus back down to Amiclo's Falls is marked that
Right.
way. The access to the campsites, they all have blue blades, but they're maintained by the AT conference team.
Good to know. So
so you
that
meant
I mean, I guess that would cover all the way up the eastern seaboard for Appalachian Trail, and then the Pacific Coast Trail and the
Yeah,
Midwest Trail and all those others that
there's
run
a
too.
lot of them.
Yep, there sure are. All right,
And
sorry,
the
Andy, I
ones,
keep jumping in on
no,
you.
you're good. You're good. So you mentioned just a couple of minutes ago that for a while after you became a mapping representative for Georgia, that you were not able to add new parks for a while, and I think that had like just ended. That was kind of program wide. It wasn't just specific for Georgia, as I recall. Correct?
it was U.S. or North American wide.
Yeah. So
They were
I
trying to
think that
add
had
on.
just ended right after I got my general started in Parks on the Air like last year. It ended shortly before that at some point. So what had caused that? You said they were trying to catch up some data.
Yeah, they were adding on international parks, and some of the states were further along with their mapping programs than others, and tried to get it evened out. I mean, when I started, or when we were at 205, there were still quite a few that had not been activated in Georgia, but now they've all been activated at
Yeah.
least once.
So, so
And
I had yeah when I was starting into Parks on the Air, I kind of the word on the street was that well they're not adding any parks now, so
Right.
you're not going to get first activation at anything because they're not adding anymore. So I actually reached out to my local representative here in Missouri and
Yeah.
said, "Hey, here's a few conservation. So here in Missouri, we have Missouri State Conservation Areas, and so I said, here's a few of them that I don't see on the Parks on the Air list." And he went through those and he added some for me, and I took off down there about as fast as I could, and I
Yeah.
got my name on a couple of them. So, sorry, Jim, go ahead.
You
no,
told John thanks, though, right? He's also the North American mapping rep, so he's kind of my
Okay,
boss in that regard. Yeah.
okay, all right, sounds good.
so Claude, is there a rep for every state, or is it even more granular?
No, it's every state in the U.S. now. It gets more granular in some of the foreign countries where there's, obviously it's a country, not a state. They may not have the subdivisions we use, but we've got 225 now, and I know most of them.
And
And
new parks are coming along, right? I was just thinking the other day that there had been a couple of parks that are becoming U.S. national parks or national historical sites, those kind of things, right? Didn't that just happen recently in
they're
Georgia?
working on one down there making,
Yeah.
but it's already on the list. It'll change to a full park when
Got
they
it.
do finally get Okmulgee changed over. But
But those are the kind of things that you got to keep up with.
right,
Excellent, excellent. So let's switch the topic a little bit. Uh, it, I know from experience and just seeing you online, you activate a lot of parks. Are there two or three things you would tell people who let's start with I I've never activated a park before and I want to start. What kind of tips would you give people?
if you never started, find somebody that does. Go with them if you can, or go with your club, and because you pick up so much more than I can tell you to do, and often we don't know what we don't know till we get out there and fumble a little bit. I mean, I was nervous to begin with too. So the first thing I would say do is hunt from home, so that you get used to the rhythm before you get out there and look for trouble. Basically, by getting out and not knowing what you're doing.
I'd also just to give ourselves the plug here, we've got a YouTube video called "Get It Started with POTA," and we went out and did an activation and filmed it. So
Yeah,
if you don't have an Elmer nearby and you want to figure out
right.
how to do it, that's another great way to start. Is go learn from our mistakes.
You guys have that one over at the Ham Radio Prep side. On our side, we actually have another two of them at World Radio League YouTube channel. We've got How to POTA activating, and then we have James and his wife went out and recorded a POTA activation just recently. So we've got three videos out there that we can that you guys can go watch, and then one that I really like is an activator that I really like to follow. He's really good. He's really good about keeping the park clean, about cleaning up after he's done, and the park, the parks on the air, the spirit of things. He's really good about being patient with hunters, and that's Thomas K4SWL. He's a really popular activator, and I really like to follow his stuff as well. So absolutely give him a shout out here. But yeah, so as far as that's kind of the activator side, and I know there's we could dive into to phone activations. We could CW activations. There's both out there, but kind of really one of the people act like you have to have a field radio or kind of light gear, but you can really, I mean, you can take anything out there. There's no really limitations, is there, on what you can activate with?
No, just as long as you can get a signal out. And
Yeah.
I mean, the first couple I used were 20-year-old radios, and they worked for a short time. Getting the lithium iron phosphate batteries had been a game changer. But you can do it with
Absolutely.
the plug-in, the 110 outlet at the park, or an OLED acid battery too.
Sure. Go to a park with a campsite, right? Or
Right.
lots of times picnic table areas have a power you can plug into, so you don't even need a battery. You just need a radio and antenna. That's
Probably
great.
the biggest thing people need to do is go to the POTA website, register before you try to start, look at the map, look at the rules. It doesn't take long, and you're pretty well prepared at that point.
And that's POTA.app, right?
That's right.
POTA.
I'll drop a link to that in the show notes
It's
down here
unfortunate they use
we can have that.
the app domain because a lot of people try to download it from the Play Store, but it's a URL. It's actually a website, not a phone app. So, but that
Okay.
is exactly the place to go.
Awesome.
So as far as for hunters, they can also use that site, can't they, to find activators that are currently on the air?
Quickly. I mean, I was playing with an antenna on the back of my truck today in the driveway, and I said, well, I'll make sure it still works. So I'll look on the POTA.app website. There's a guy in Kentucky on 40 meters. I contact him with 10-watt radio just that quick. It's a good way to try out your radio and your operating practice, too.
And you guys have been very kind. Sorry, Jim.
I was just gonna say one thing I like about the POTA contacts is they're not super rushed by like a contest contact, right? When you're doing a contest, all they want is call sign exchange. I'm done with you. Go away. At least with POTA, if you want to say, hey, how do I sound? Is my antenna okay? Those kind of things. You
Yeah.
can usually stop for a minute or two and chat with the person and get more information. So they're a lot more casual than a contest.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. And
Just to
I
drop-
like going fast.
Yeah. Well, I like going fast too. It's a balance, right?
But you do have to you listen. I mean, somebody's having trouble understanding what you're saying or what they need to say next. I'll try to pull back and say, let's talk just a second. And sometimes they ask, what are you running? Because I run a lot of QRP. And they say, well, how many watts are you running, And it's fun to do that and be able to explain it to them.
I think POTA activators are very adaptable because you can be running fast, and a lot of hunters, experienced hunters, will just they'll come, they'll give you your signal report, their state, and they'll go. And then you have somebody who's new or doesn't know exactly what. And most activators I've experienced are very patient, very kind. They'll stop, slow down, take a few minutes, and then right back up to speed as soon as they're done with that contact. So it's really a great
And Claude, as a hunter, what do I want to say to the activator when I get them? They're calling CQ, they answer me. What do I want to tell them?
Full call sign with NATO phonetics, the right kind. Though I also have to decode somebody's funny, comical call sign descriptions. But give it one time and try to get in the rhythm of if you can hear the other hunters calling. Do it when I say QRZ or listen or whenever I end my call, and it's much more efficient. I try to make sure I get the first call. Even if I only get a November. I'm gonna say the November station before Whiskey and Charlie and all those other guys, because I want to give you credit for being the first one to call me. And sometimes I'll hear the low signal, and then I get the boomers that come after it. And it's just like any kind of contest, even though it's not truly a contest. What you do as the station calling CQ is your pile up, your activation.
And what's the exchange I want to give back to the hunter?
If once he recognizes your call sign, you hear him read it back properly. He says November 4, Bravo Fox Romeo. You're 5'9", and he may say the part number, maybe not. You need to say, thanks, Claude, if you want to call me by name. You're 5'9" or 5'7", or I can barely hear you. 4-4 in Minnesota or something like that, and that's really all you have to do.
So pretty much signal, report, and state.
Right, and neither one of them truly required, but as long as I get a good clear call sign, I'm that's what I really want.
State is. I found that the state is mostly useful for me for validating that I got the correct call sign. And sometimes the hunter's out of state. So it's not always 100% accurate, but lots of times I cross-check that call sign with the state, make sure that I heard my hunter correctly, I got the right call sign. That's why that's so useful. We referenced the POTA.app site earlier. I am going to give us one more plug right here. You guys have been very kind, and you've opened up your spotting system where we can other people can pull that data. We've pulled that. We've imported that. We're importing that data constantly into our World Radio League logger. So if you go to the spotting page on the World Radio League logger, you'll see a lot of POTA spots there, and you can filter by POTA only, and you can just copy those to your logbook and use that as well. Nice. Now we've got the activators and we've got the hunters. There's another kind of crossover that can happen sometimes called a park to park. So
park to park,
how's that work?
That's like getting the trump card, right? That's what you really want, because you can do a lot more with it. It's driven by awards. You get awards for park to park. You get awards for all the states. And I got to back up one, Andy. The accessibility of the Parks on Air website and the data system is one thing that's really made Parks on the Air so successful, because you can see who's spotted. You can find out my stats real quickly. But the park to parks, when somebody says park to park, and I usually don't say it because I think it's a crutch, but that's okay. Sometimes I get tired of waiting because I'm trying to activate too. But if I hear somebody else activating, I'll usually throw it in there, and that the world stops for a minute, unless there's two parks, and then you got to figure out which one was calling you. But it's pretty cool, and we do get credit. And in that case, the park to park, you really should get their park name or park number, but you don't have to anymore, because POTA's system works so well. They line them back up.
You guys have a great confirmation system there for park to parks. It really makes it really useful. So
Claude,
let's dive into. Sorry, Jim. Let's dive into. I think we've got some a Georgia specific POTA event coming up. It's coming up right away. Jim, go ahead, take it away. You know about this.
Yeah. So Georgia State Parks on the air. So correct. You said there's 221 POTA qualified parks in Georgia, but in this event that's going to happen the 5th and 6th of April, you're only trying to activate the actual state parks,
right? Parks. Yep. Some of those state parks in there, if you look on the POTA.app list, the names of each one of them will end with state park. That's one of the perks of being the mapping rep. I can make sure they were that way. Some of them had been downgraded, like we talked about Hart. It's now not a full state park, but it was before the changeover from state to federal, to local, and it's still capable of leaving it on a list. But there's 52 that have state park on the end. And honestly, we didn't think we could get all 205 back then when we started this activated, but it's really gone fast this time. Got 70 people have signed, 70 call signs have signed up. Only one park hadn't been selected. I think I'm going to have to go to Centennial down in Atlanta to do that. But that's a tough one.
That would be a challenge. Being an urban park, that would be a challenge unless you were going to, just you had a truck with a antenna on the tailgate or something like that.
Can't do it. See, that's the thing. You got to be careful because it's not inside the park boundary. And those
Oh
parking
yeah,
lots,
there's not a parking lot inside the park boundary.
yeah, and
Oh
I can't
yeah.
cheat, so somebody get me.
See, yeah, I know. I have the same feeling. Is like if I don't do it 100% right, somebody's gonna call me out on it. So
Yeah,
you mentioned Hart. I signed. That's a park up by Lake Hartwell in
correct.
northeast Georgia,
Northeast
right on
Georgia.
the South Carolina line. And I said when I talked to you a week or so ago, I asked you
Yeah,
what parks were you missing, and you said that was one of them. So I
it
signed up
was.
for that one. So
Yeah, I really
I'm looking
appreciate you
forward to a
doing
fun
that. Yeah.
weekend.
It is, and you'll probably see people rove through there.
Right.
In fact, let me say there's six or seven classes. In the activator side, we've got single op, single part, single op, multi part, and then we have club, and then we got QRP and high and low power in these activators. So it's quite a few, and some of us, like I did last year, I went to Hart and about 8 others up in that area too. So you may see people pass
So
through.
Okay.
So you
this
just
is
threw another term out there. I just want to pause for just real quick. You said a rove. Can you explain what a rove is for people that are new to
You
POTA?
know, they do that in the QSO parties too, but it's when you set up in multiple locations during the event. In our case, it would be going to multiple of those 52 parks.
so yeah.
And you also want to get as many of the other 52 parks as your part to part because it's a multiplier for the way we calculate the score.
So for this one weekend, it's still a national parks on the air contest, and you're still or event, and your parks still qualify towards all the things that you can get scored for on the POTA normal POTA site. But there's a special state run contest, if you will, that
Yeah,
just for people who are trying to activate these parks.
that is correct. We got allowance from Parks and Air National to do our event and use their part numbers, use their ADIF formats for the files.
Oh, great.
And again, the hunters don't have to do anything but hunt, and they can keep track of their own log. But the regular POTA logs that we do when we're doing Parks and Air anytime is what the activators will use. So it's super simple, hardly any changes. And one thing I'd like to tout is there's one guy, Robbie, W1RCP, worked on the website. So now when you upload your log, as soon as you drop the log in the process, you get a feedback what your score is immediately. So we'll close out the contest by the end of 2 weeks and have it finalized by the end of the month.
So if I'm someone like Andy who's not in the state of Georgia, but I'm hunting, is there a hunter award? Can I get points for 52 parks or whatever else I can do as a hunter?
You can, for sure. In fact, there's an in-state and out-of-state hunter, and their scoring pattern is the number of contacts times the number of distinct Georgia parks. So if you work 52 parks and only made 100 QSOs, 5,200 points. And
Andy, let me know. I'll help you get your first 100.
so what's
Okay.
the trick for doing that, though?
Sounds good.
Ham alert.
Ham alert. Okay.
You plug the
Interesting.
52
Great
parks
idea. I
in
use
there.
Ham Alert all the time.
And I've got one trigger set up just for this event. It's not turned on until Saturday morning on the 5th. And so even though I rode 8 or 9 parks, I think I contacted 26 other Georgia parks, which is pretty good counting driving and setting up and all that too.
So date and time. When and how long is this event?
It starts at 8 a.m. What's that, 1200 UTC on Saturday and ends at 7:59 p.m. or 11:59 on Sunday. So
And
it's
so for people
24
who
hours,
might
48 hours.
watch out at different times, that's August 5th and 6th, 2025.
April 5th, 6th.
April 5th and 6th. Thank
Yeah,
you.
right away.
The other A month.
Well, yeah, and this is our third one. First weekend of April was the first one, and it's worked out real well. QSO party, Georgia QSO's the next week after too, so kind of gets everybody stirred up with Georgia
Wow.
parks and counties.
Nice.
Yeah, I know a lot of my fellow hams who might not even be as into parks, but are definitely into George Cuso Party, and I've done that too. I've done
Yeah,
roves where, like, I went down near Tybee Island and I did a rove of 4 counties
yeah.
one year, and so there's a lot of fun, different things you can do when you're going out and activating. So Claude, anything else we should know about the Georgia State Parks on the Air contest coming up before we move on?
Well, I think you could put our link for the gaparks.org
Oh yeah.
website. It's got a list of all the people who signed up for parks. You know where they're going to be. The rules are there. The list of 52 parks are there, and it works pretty well. And so that's one big thing that I want people to know. And of course, I want everybody that gets out there to hunt me. Just put me on your ham alert. Don't worry about anything else, and I'll get all the contacts.
And also, anything else, we'll definitely get that link in the show notes. Anything else about Parks on the Air itself, the worldwide organization that we need to know that we didn't cover?
We're still putting parks in all the time. In fact, I've worked on some other countries too, though I don't haven't been to the countries. The same principles apply. So they're growing all the time. Sometimes I run into people. It's like anything new. They don't like the idea of POTA because they don't know what it is. If you ever get them in front of a computer, show them that spotting page and say, "Hey, you want to make sure your HF rig's still working? If you can get this guy on 7268, I bet you'll get a reply." And the good thing about parks on the air is when you're in a park, it's usually QRM free, no RFI, so I can hear things there that I can never hear at home.
And the other fun thing is that if you wanted to try a different mode, doing Parks on the Air is a great way to do it. So if you're one of the things that Andy and I have been talking about is we're both trying to get our CW better.
Yeah,
There's a lot of people doing CW in parks who would probably have the patience to go ahead and work that contact with you if you're just getting started there. So that's another great opportunity.
There's even a couple of guys I've seen that have been doing FT8 quite a bit. I think K7CAR, I believe, is one of them that I've seen quite a bit. Claude, I think you were getting ready to say something. Go ahead.
well, all I was going to say is it's a great opportunity to learn CW and practice it because you already you know what they're going to be saying. You know you look at the photo out list and you can expect their call sign. You learn yours really quickly. It's pretty simple exchange to be able to learn it on. But you're right about the digital FT8, and we allow any mode that POTA allows. I guess you could do a moon bounce, but I don't think anybody's going to be competitive there. But
Yeah.
digital sideband or phone or CW. I activated one park last year on FM from BlackRock, Jim.
Oh, nice. And, you could, if you were just a technician, you wanted to take your HT up to the top of Stone Mountain. That's a great place.
Oh man,
There's a lot of RF up there, but still, it's nice and high. That's the point. So you can take your HT and you might be able to make 8 or 10 contacts easy
Yeah.
from the top of that on 14652 or one of the other
And
technician
just to
band.
qualify that, repeater contacts are not allowed, correct? Those are
Right.
not
No.
allowed under the POTA. Okay. And then one other thing I wanted to cover as far as Parks on the Air itself goes. So you mentioned you feel like you're out in the park, and if you don't follow the rules exactly, somebody's gonna catch you. But it's really based on just trust in your users, right? I mean, that you just take their word for it, basically, that they're following the rules, correct?
That is correct. I was really using myself as an example because
Oh yeah, no, yeah.
I was in the National Guard. I was a sergeant major, and I don't know what they do, but sometimes you got to watch them.
All
They,
right.
they do the
Now,
real work,
Jim,
Claude.
Huh?
They do the real work for the officers. That's what I'm told anyway.
Uh,
I have families who are chiefs in the Navy, and that's what they tell me all the time. That the
and
chiefs,
drink
do
a lot
the
of
chiefs
coffee.
and the sergeant majors and stuff, they're the ones that do the real work.
That's right.
so Jim
Claude,
mentioned that you've activated quite a few parks there, Claude. Do you have any favorite activations? Anything that sticks out? Anything exciting that's happened while you've been out in the park?
Luckily, I hadn't had anything too bad. I had to talk myself out of some confused park rangers. It's legal to do what we're doing. There was one guy at a battlefield park up near Atlanta, and I won't call his name, but he had just taken over his job. And I pulled in the park. He's got a gravel overflow lot down there, and it's really a quiet day. I said, "Well, I'm going to pull down there, put up my antenna," and he couldn't understand why I would want to do that or whether he could do it. And there's an older guy there that's the historian for the battlefield. He's got his head going up and down the whole time. He gets it, but the new manager didn't understand, and I get a lot of that from the military. New commander comes in, he doesn't know what power he's got. This poor fellow didn't know that just because he couldn't call his boss, he couldn't say yes. So I finally wore him down. That was probably one of the more fun. They called me back a few weeks later to come and do a class. It's fun. Yeah.
I had
That's great.
not a POTA park, but I had an encounter in a park where I had a radio out and I was looking at it, and some guy drove, and a police officer drove up, and he goes, "Turn down that drone." I'm like, "It's not a drone." And then I explained it to him, and he was like, "Oh, that's cool." And we spent 10 minutes talking about ham radio. 10 minutes later, he comes back. I'm like, I haven't done anything now, so I don't know what I'm going to be in trouble for. But he introduces me to his partner who wants to learn about ham radio.
Oh, wow. That's great.
So,
That's awesome.
So it went from, I'm like, have you got the right guy? So it went from, oh my God, to, hey, sure, I can help you.
Yeah.
I remember
Good
I was out in a
conversation.
park. I was in a park. Oh, it's been several months ago, and of course, like I said, we have a lot of conservation areas. So we have the Missouri Department of Conservation, and our conservation agents are basically, they have the same authority as like a state trooper, but they're they're trained in the conservation department. So I had one of them pull in. Just he was going to pull in, do some paperwork, so I'm out there. I'm getting ready to use a throw line to put my antenna in the tree, and he pulls up and he's like, "What's all the rope for?" So I explained to him what I was doing, and he was completely good with it. And he was like, I almost got the impression that he had seen similar things before, because he was all good with it, and he went on and did his paperwork. And then I also had a park volunteer show up at that same park a different day, and he wanted to he wasn't the agent, he was just one of the volunteers, and he wanted to take some pictures because he wanted to share it with the rest of the team, because I guess they like to know what people are doing in the parks. And so I haven't heard anything back from that, but maybe somebody was inspired to go get their ham radio license. I don't know.
That'd be cool. Claude, what are we missing? Is there anything on POTA we should really know? You covered a lot of stuff here.
It's fun. It's encouraged a lot of people either to get active again like I did, or to upgrade their license, or just get into radio altogether. And when you were talking about the Rangers and the encounters, once you went into a park 3 or 4 years ago, they would look at you funny. Now, when I go in and I don't set up where the last guy did, they tell me, well, there's a better spot down here. Of course, the funny thing about HF, you don't have to be on top of the hill. Sometimes I know it's noisy over there because I've probably been there plenty of times, and they think I want to have the high elevation like you would line of sight. But with HF propagation, you really need. I point out at the sky and said, I want to hit that cloud 100 miles away, and it's going to do what I want to do. It's fun. But
All right. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Jim.
I do like that POTA brings people together and gets people active in ham radio. I mean, we were talking earlier, 2016, it all started with national parks on the air as a way for ham radio to help celebrate the 100th anniversary of national parks. And I remember going up to Acadia and all the way out to Cabrera Park in San Diego and down to Dry Tortugas. So I made the most of that.
You sure did.
I've continued to include parks in my road trip plan, so that's a lot of fun. But it's also great to see, like, from our students. I just saw a message today. I pulled it up, and Jeff said, "Can't wait to get my general. Weather's warming up. It'll be POTA time." And if that doesn't inspire you to want to do POTA because New Hams want to do POTA, I don't know what will.
We have had a lot of POTA meetups, get-togethers, that's encouraged plenty of people. I went to one 2 weeks ago down near Millen, Georgia, about 2.5 hours away. long drive, and I really didn't need to go there to activate the park. But I met 25 or 30 people I would have never seen in person, face to face. It's really encouraging to see them there, and everybody sets up differently, but nobody makes a terrible mistake as long as they can get contact.
Yeah.
So that's been
And
one thing that's helped a lot too.
yeah, and I would 100% echo what you guys said. POTA's done so much for the ham radio community,
Yeah.
brought so many new people in, and people who live in apartments, people who live in HOAs, who can't put out an antenna, they're getting into ham radio because that's they can get away, go down to a park, and activate up there. Absolutely fantastic what Parks on the Air has done
Right.
for ham radio.
All right.
So I think we've covered the POTA topic and the Georgia Parks on the Air topic. So let's go ahead and jump into what's going on in the shack. So Claude, you're our guest today. What's going on in your ham shack these days?
I saw that question on there, and all I do is maintain my equipment and plan for right now the Georgia State Parks on the Air. Nothing really new. I'm waiting on the new Yaesu FTX1F so I can spend my money on their product if it ever shows up. But since I've been doing QRP, I really, really want to see that radio come out. But other than
So
that,
what's your primary shack rig?
I don't. I mean, I do have one here beside me, but it hadn't been turned on in a long time.
Okay.
In fact,
What's
when I
your
was playing
preferred
with the
rig
antenna,
right now to use in the park?
oh, KX2.
KX2? Yeah.
I never
I've
thought
been
I would.
eyeing the Elecraft KX line. Those radios are beautiful, but they're pricey.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you look at them on the resale market. You can get the money back if you don't like it. And
Yeah.
So Claude, 10 watts QRP. Are you doing voice or CW?
voice.
Wow. And you don't have any
Nice.
troubles with activating on 10 watts?
Since it's been about 2 years, I hadn't gone 100%. I've been like 90%, 10 watts power,
Right.
and total contacts have got. I went over the 50,000 mark 2 months ago.
Okay, then.
Wow.
QRP works.
Thousand activations.
Wow.
All the parks in
Wow.
Georgia 3 times. Yeah.
I was going to, it 3 times. I knew you had every park in Georgia, but I didn't
Sort
realize you
of,
had.
kind of 3. I say it that way.
Wow.
We had 205. I got 205. Then I added on 20 more, and I got 19 more, and I got 224. And then last year we put on Eufaula National Wildlife, so I went down there a few weeks ago. So I got 225 again, so I got the top. All of them activated again.
Wow.
So
That's
it's been
fantastic.
fun.
And have you I'm assuming you've gotten gotten a Kilo award, which is 1,000 contacts in a park, in a specific park. Have you gotten that in more than one park, or have you?
It's in the teens right now, I think.
Okay.
So,
I'm working
in
on
fact-
my first Kilo still.
well, it's fun. In fact, a buddy of mine that introduced me to Parks and Air lives close to me, and we went to our local park here to hit 100 activations together at the same park. And that was fun. It was cold, but it was fun. And now, once we got over the 100 mark, then we can go back now. We just want to hit it the same day. So.
All right, you gave me a challenge now. I pulled up my stats. I'm at 846. So if I can
Activation.
get just over 150 next weekend, I'm going to get my Kilo.
Oh,
Nice.
well, now kilos only count per park,
Oh. Well, I don't know if I'm going to get 1,000 in the park over the weekend, but
Again, that's the thing that's really helped it, because if you're a little competitive like some people are, you can look on there. And sometimes when I'm working somebody from a park or waiting to do a park to park, I'll pull up their stats and say, well, do I really need to be aggressive, or do I need to back off? And if somebody's only say second or third activation, I'll be a lot more tolerant than somebody's got hundreds, But you get the feedback right away. You can see it on the screen.
that's true.
I've got 1,219 activation QSOs, and my closest park is at 665. So
Nice.
we'll get there eventually.
It's so fun. I mean, I don't do as many activations on the weekend as I do during the week, and it slows down because not as many people are hunting during the week. But A
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
a lot of folks that want to get all the parts in the state or certain ones, so I work lists for them too.
I have a park close to where I work, and I find that if I go there on my lunch around lunchtime,
Yeah,
that there are
yeah.
quite a few activators out even during the week. Yeah,
I'm going to share my favorite activation real quick. I know we're not
yeah. Oh, you're
on
good.
that, but last year, 2023, I took a road trip to Maritime Canada, and I
Oh
activated
yeah,
the two Marconi sites there. Um,
yeah.
one at one in Nova Scotia and one in Newfoundland. Now, the Newfoundland was under a club call. There's a club that operates
Okay.
in the tower, so that doesn't show up in my stats. But I have 70 QSOs from the Marconi site
Wow.
in Nova Scotia on a Sunday morning because I decided to put that in. So did a little radio, little history. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I guess so. Pretty place to go too.
100%. Especially
All
in the
right,
fall when I work. Okay, sorry, Andy.
all right, Jim. Jim, we're with you. Go
Okay,
ahead. What's going on new in your
with
shack?
me. What's going on in my shack? So I've been building things lately, so I like to tinker a little bit. If you can see over my shoulder here, I'm going to go into it in more detail another time. But this is an enhanced VHF UHF digital hotspot. So I basically
Nice.
took the Pi Star and I made three. So now I have a D Star hotspot, a DMR hotspot, and a Fusion hotspot all in one
Fantastic.
unit that I can use and manage and keep up with. So a fun little project that I'll be publishing more about there. And then
Nice.
on the ham radio prep side, just this week, I built a satellite. So we
That's
said we were going to do a
fantastic.
satellite course, and AMSAT sells a CubeSat simulator, and that's what
Yeah.
this is. So it's
Beautiful.
the same size and has a lot of the same functionality as an actual CubeSat. I built one, and I'm really excited. It took me about 3 hours to put it together, and you can send. There's a little camera here. You get slow scan TV pictures off
Hmm.
of it, those kind of things. So that's been my really fun achievement the last week or two
That's
in the
fantastic.
shack.
That's great.
Yeah. Uh, Andy, what about you?
All right. So, just real quickly on you were talking about those hotspots. Honestly, that is a topic that is not probably there's not as much good information on hotspots as there ought to be. So maybe we ought to take a dive into that on a future podcast, Jim. So maybe we can put a pin in that
Sure.
and revisit that
Yeah.
later. But okay, so in my shack, I've got quite a few things going on. So I've just started with the LICW club, Long Island CW club. Started studying CW with them. Great program, great teachers there. Really been enjoying that. Great community, and yeah, I've been brushing up on my CW. I've started back into doing some more POTA activations. So in the last couple weeks, I have done. I just had my POTA stats up here. Yes. So in just the last 2 or 3 weeks, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've done 7 POTA. Well, 8 attempted POTA activations. Their band conditions were pretty bad a couple times, and I did not get all 10 contacts during those activations. So, but I've been out to the park 7 or 8 times in the past few weeks, and really been enjoying it. All CW. So I think my last single sideband activation was in January or February, and I think that's the one that we released the video on. Since then, I haven't been doing single sideband for a while. I've been doing CW because I've been practicing, really enjoying it. It's a lot of fun, and it's a great way to learn CW. And we were talking about CW earlier. I will say probably the best way to learn CW is to the Long Island CW teaches a method called code talking, to where you speak the DAWs and DITs kind of in the character formation. So like an N dot it, an A da, that type of thing. And so if you can memorize your call sign and 599 or 5NN, which is the short code for 599, and 73, you can hunt POTA no problem. And that's what I did. I memorized my call sign. I memorized my this has been several months back. I memorized my call sign. I got to where I could recognize and send 599 and 73, and I would just go down the POTA page and just grab every CW one on there that I could. And all you got to do is you got to just wait for them to they send CQ, and there's a pause, and everybody jumps in, and you just send your call sign right amidst everybody else, and they'll come back to you. They're really patient. All you got to do is send your call sign, and you can send your state too. I mean, the state is just 2 letters, so that's really easy to learn. But just send your call sign, your state, a signal report of 599. That it doesn't matter if that's not the correct signal or not. They're gonna be patient with you. It's a really good way to just get in there and learn CW, because over time you start realizing you're picking up more of those pro signs, BK, which is like an over to you pro sign and that type of thing. You just start picking those up over time. So that's a really great way to learn. And so when I started activations, or when I started with LICW, I took some of that experience with me, so it was really easy for me to start picking up a lot of stuff really quickly. And so I've been doing some activations, really enjoying that with CW. I've been working on a 3D printer project. I wasn't sure whether to share this or not, but I'm just going to go ahead and give you a quick preview. I've got an antenna project I'm working on. It's going to be an end-fed half-wave POTA antenna, and hopefully, if it goes well, maybe I can share this. If somebody wants to know how I made one, or maybe somebody wants one, I might be able to. Once I get it done, get it all tested, make sure I have the right antenna wire length and everything, make sure I've got the toroid windings all correct, then I can share that around. Maybe I might even end up being able to sell a few if anybody's interested. We'll see about that.
I'll definitely beta test it for you, because I need to get more into doing toroids. That's not something that I've done.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I might maybe I'll send you a kit so you can practice the windings and everything. All right, sounds good. And then so I was fighting with my 3D printer a whole lot until I found out that I had my temperature set too high on the extruder, and it was literally flooding up into the extruder behind the nozzle and then hardening. I had to drill that out twice with a drill, get all the plastic out of there, and I found out when I turned the temperature down, all of it went away. I haven't figured out how to use PETG yet. I was struggling with that, but PLA, I've got it running just fine. So I've been using OnShape. Yeah.
Let me ask you about, before you get away from CW too much, when you're hunting, has anybody tell you not to zero beat?
I have just recently heard people starting to discuss that. That was kind of a new concept. Explain that to me. What's the
way I understand it? I mean, I don't do CW now, but I did have to learn it way back when. But the point of not zero beating is you got 10 people calling dead on the same frequency. The activator's going to hear 10 signals with the same tone. If you go a little high, a little low, you're going to shift your tone just enough so that you stand out from the crowd.
That makes sense.
Sometimes it's the voice on sideband.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. I'll have to remember that. I'll have to remember that for when I'm hunting, to be a little more careful about that. That's a really great.
Just tune off a little bit and you'll be good.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So and actually for my activations, I've been using the Xiegu X6100, which is kind of the Chinese version of the IC705, but it really works great. It's a fantastic little radio. It does single sideband at 10 watts, CW at 10 watts, on an external power source. Or single sideband and CW up to 5 watts with an internal battery. It's got an internal tuner that works extremely well, and it has an SWR graph on it, so you can plug your antenna in, do an SWR sweep across a whole frequency spectrum. It's a great little radio. I really like that. I've also been using the True SDX, which is I like it. It's a little bit of, you have to learn how to use the settings properly. It's not it's a cheap radio, and it's made to be a cheap radio. And I'm not faulting the radio at all. It does exactly what it's supposed to do, and it does it well. But it's a little bit of a learning curve just because it's so cheap. I found the internal speaker is not very good. You about have to use an external speaker to pull any weak signals at all. But I've been using it for the past couple activations, and it's it works really well. I've paired those radios with the Chilligans JPC12 antenna, and that's it's a really good antenna. I really like it. Another thing I've done, I don't have it with me. Maybe I can drop a photo or something, maybe a video clip in the show notes. But I recently cleaned up and restored an old CW key. So it was actually belonged to my boss, and he passed away a few years ago, and his family gave me the key. So I have a CW key. I cleaned it up. I took it off of the wood base it was on and mounted it on a copper block, and that was a really fun project. So maybe I'll drop a photo or video clip in the show notes. But yeah, that's pretty much what's been going on in my shack. So not to take up too much time there, but
No worries.
anyway, all right. Any last comments from any of y'all before we wrap things up?
Claude, I'll give you the last word.
Have fun with radio. I mean, I didn't for a long time. We moved into HOA, but then it's not, you blame it on HOA, but it's also the way our lives progress, our work progresses. And sometimes you go through laws. If you get out there and try it, don't like it, you don't have to keep doing it, but it's really appealing to see new people get into the hobby. And you want to say, get the young people in, but it's new people. I've gone to a lot of Hamfest and met recent retirees, couples quite often, that want something different to do. And don't forget about just getting out with the radio summits. There's a lot of hikers still out there that want to do SOTA. So anything you can do to keep people interested in learning more about the hobby, but being happy and give them something to do besides sitting in front of the computer and watching YouTube all the time, even though we're on YouTube.
Even though we're on YouTube, I agree. I'm gonna ditto that, and I'll make the suggestion that throw a few parks into a trip. So if you've got we took all the stuff we've talked about, right? The 705 or the KX2 or the BitX or the True SDX. Those are all little tiny radios, and you can put together a briefcase and take all that stuff with you. And if this is going to sound sexist, but if one part of your travel group wants to go shopping, you can let them go shopping, and you can go to the park and have a good time and set up. And it doesn't even have to be POTA. It can just be some time out in the park with the radio and learning new things. So,
well, sometimes my wife tells me I need to get to the park to get some stress relief or something like that.
Well, that's part of the reason why I'm going to North Georgia for a weekend, Claude, is the wife said, hey, why don't you go somewhere? So right. I'm killing two birds with one stone for sure. Andy, how about you?
And honestly, those kits can be so I was gonna say those kits can be so small because all you have to have is a wire antenna. You don't have to have a whole lot there. You can just a really light kit and to take with you on a trip. I've got a trip probably coming up next month, and hopefully maybe I can hit a couple parks while I'm away. But yeah, so honestly, I think we covered a lot of great stuff here. Claude, thank you so much for coming on. We really, really, really appreciate it, and great to have you on with your experience with Parks on the Air, the Parks on the Air program. So,
and Claude,
if people want to get in touch with you, how yeah.
Well,
I was gonna say if people.
That's
Sorry,
exactly
my connection's bad over here. If people want to get in touch with you, Claude, how can they do that?
Before I forget, I do Facebook. We've got two groups that we maintain. One's the Georgia Ham Radio Portable. We have one specific to Georgia State Parks on the Air, and it's a good bit of activity there. But there's some people that don't like Facebook, so we've got an email group that we use. But for me personally, go to QRZ.com. My email address is there, and you'll see me sitting on top of one of my shipping boxes at my 204th park. Wausau Island. Looks like somebody said I looked like a homeless guy, but it was a cold day. I was really wrapped up, but I was happy to be there and get the final one and the first time around.
Excellent.
All right, Jim, how do they get in touch with you and Ham Radio Prep?
So if you're looking for me, search my call sign, N4BFR. You can do QRZ. You can do World Radio League search. You can do, just put it into Google and you'll find me. I'm on a bunch of places. You can find me as lead instructor at hamradioprep.com. As I mentioned, we've got license courses. So if you're watching this and you're a technician ham and you're like, well, I want to get my general so I can go out and go into a park, we got a course for you. If you're like, oh, I haven't gotten started with HF yet, we got a course for you. So go check us out, hamradioprep.com, and we're at Ham Radio Prep on all the socials too. Andy, what about World Radio League?
Yeah, so World Radio League, we are, of course, at World Radio League at all the socials. We'll drop those links, or at least one or two of those links in the description. You can find us at community.worldradioleague.com. If you're looking for me specifically, you can tag at N0APX there, or message N0APX in the chat, in the direct messaging chat. If you're looking for me specifically outside of World Radio League, you can email me, Andy at N0APX.com. I'm on Instagram at N0APX.hamradio, I believe is my handle there. And then you can go to my website, N0APX.com. Kind of a theme going on there. But anyway, so all right, Jim, thank you for jumping on here and being a co-host once again. And Claude, once again, we really, really, really appreciate you coming on and being our guest.
Glad to be here.
Thank you so much, and thanks for all you guys do over at POTA for the ham radio community. Really, really great thing you guys are doing.
And yeah, thanks, Claude, and hope to get you in the log next weekend a couple of times.
Couple of times. There you go.
Absolutely.
All right, 7-2 and 7-3, everybody, from the QRM podcast. We'll see you next time.
See ya.